Is the 14-team college football playoff model good? All right, so we have information here from the college football playoff that the Big Ten and the SEC are asking for, what was it, 3 bids, Zach, each in this 14-team playoff, and then the ACC and Big 12 are asking for 2, and then the group of 5 cumulatively would get 1 altogether. Seems to me like maybe this is kind of a, overplay by the Big Ten and the SEC, just trying to get as much as they possibly can, because I think that they know that they are not long for the college football playoffs. And so as they keep expanding, they just want to make sure they get more and more teams in. I'm curious your thoughts, though. Do you feel like this 14-team college football playoff model is good or bad?
I think it's dumb.
Secret third option, dumb.
Well, I mean, it's bad, dumb.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I was like, how could I be succinct? So the thing I love about the 12-team model, and I wouldn't even say I like the model. It's more what I like that it guarantees is automatic bids for conference champions. And like, I feel like this model, what it's doing is it's saying, forget conference champions. We just want protected teams, period.
Yeah.
And like, I think if we go to a pod system with 2 conferences, I want pod champions to be in the playoff. I want it earned. This is not about earning it. Regardless, if you say, well, if you're in the top 3, but I just don't think that's let's just go back to the 14 playoff then. Because, so I just don't think I get it. Josh Pate made a good point about this, that this is really just an opportunity for the Big Ten and the SEC to say, we tried. And I appreciate that, but also, this is why I think it has to move at some point to being led by a commissioner rather than driven by conferences. Because this is a power play. And while it benefits the Big Ten, it's a bad power play that I don't think helps the sport.
No, I agree. I think that unfortunately, this is what you get when the entire future of college football is uncertain. With expansion, with what's happening with the conferences, if the Big Ten and the SEC are even going to be, playing ball with the NCAA years from now, this is kind of what you get, and it's unfortunate, but I mean, we haven't even played a day of the 12-team playoff season yet, and we're already talking about expanding more, and that's because the TV execs are the ones in charge here. I've never really liked the argument of this devalues the regular season, because I think that this regular season is valued by the viewer more than everybody else. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I still think winning the Big Ten means something. But I know to some people, when there's no automatic bid into the 14 playoff, it's like, well, who cares if we win the Big Ten or not, as long as we get in the playoff? Well, I still think it means something, and I don't really care what other people think. However, in this situation, I would see the playoff being devalued. I know the Big Ten champion and the SEC champion would get themselves a first round bye. However, how much does the regular season really matter if you can get an automatic bid? Not that large, it's not like it's likely you get in, but an automatic bid that you will get in if you finish second or third in the Big Ten. And how is that going to be decided? If it's not a pod system, if Nebraska just plays a really easy schedule, are they going to get in? Because last year, Iowa was second, technically, in the Big Ten.
Yep.
Were they really the second best team? No. Ohio State was the second best team. Michigan was the best team. And I'm confident that if you would have played for second place with Ohio State and Iowa, Ohio State probably would have won that game the same, if not more, than Michigan did. So I just want for college football to figure out what they're going to do, figure out the future, and then make the decisions like this.
Yeah, I'm curious because when the 4-team playoff was introduced, it felt like it was very clear that this was going to be the option for several years. We're like 2 months into the 12-team world, and we're already trying to change it. Like, what's the difference? Like, I know TV execs want it, but like, do you have any idea, JR, like why the uproar now and not like 2 or 3 years from now?
Well, I think, and this is going into my next question, I think that the Big Ten and the SEC, I mean, we've talked about this before, are probably going to get into their system when the Big Ten playoffs, has their playoffs, and the SEC has their playoffs, and then eventually it comes down into, the winner of each playoff plays for the national championship. And I think that right now, this is just personally my thought. I haven't heard this from anybody else. My personal thought is that the Big Ten is just trying to get as much as they possibly can right now, and so is the SEC. And they're just saying, how far can we take this before the ACC and the Big 12 say, no, screw you, dude. And then the Big Ten and the SEC are like, well, we have an out here. We can move on because guess what? They don't want to play ball. And it's like, well, they don't want to play ball because you're
being dumb.
Yeah, you're being ridiculous here. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the Big Ten being one of the best conferences, and I do think the Big Ten is either the best or the second best conference. People can list national championships all they want and whatever, but that makes you dumb if you do that, because that's not how you decide who is the best conference. You have, well, back in the day, you had 14 teams in a conference, not one, but now there's obviously more than that. But, I mean, what do you think, Zach? Do you think the Big Ten and the SEC will eventually make their own playoffs?
Yeah, well, yes. And I think if that happens, that's when the commissioner comes in. Because I think, like, you have to realize, too, and I think Spartan Dog made this point a couple times last week, the further this goes, the more it kills the lesser programs. And you've got to find a way to preserve I hate to say the little guy, because that makes it feels condescending, or patronizing, but like you don't want to go too far where you alienate 90% of your programs and your athletic departments. And so, do I think it's going that way? Yes. But I think as it goes that way, there has to be more oversight than the Big Ten and the SEC commissioners. Because otherwise, I think you run into the risk of, and I know this is already happening, but, tampering and even just, rigged games, right? Like, I remember, this is an aside, but when Auburn and Penn State played at Happy Valley a few years ago, it was so one-sided from an officiating standpoint. Penn State still won, but it was so one-sided with some of the calls and some of the replay things. And you just started to wonder, like, all right, it's an SEC crew. ESPN is broadcasting the game. ESPN owns the rights to the SEC, and they just lost the rights to the Big Ten. Like, it's not, this is not me accusing ESPN of doing this, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, it's not hard to get to a world where you're rigging games because of TV money.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I completely agree. It could happen. I'm not saying that game did have that rigged, but it definitely could happen. And if we are foolish enough to believe that people would just do the right thing so that way they don't make more money, like, sorry, that's foolish. People don't do that. Like, there's a reason why all this stuff is happening. Brian Myers has a few comments here that I want to highlight because he's bringing up good points. He says, this is back when we were talking about if the 14 team playoff is good. He said 14 is probably too much, but it did. If it had happened and been in place this year, it would have been number 14 Arizona at Texas and number 13 LSU at Bama. Good matchups. They would have been good matchups. I don't think I wanted to see LSU and Bama again. I probably would have wanted to see maybe somebody new against Bama, but like you said, good matchups nonetheless. Brian also said more games equal more money. ESPN, Disney, and Fox have invested lots of money, and they're not patient about getting the return on their investment, which, just kind of goes to what you were saying there, Zach. Like, whatever they can do to make more money, to make another buck, that's what they're going to do. And then final comment, if 100% of playoff money goes to the Big Ten and SEC, they don't have to share it with the other conferences. They'll eventually do it. I agree. That is what ESPN and Fox are eventually going to want to get to, is just all the money they possibly can for themselves. And I think it's probably sooner. I don't think it's like this year or next year, but I would not be surprised if 2026, we have a Big Ten and SEC playoff happening. Just those two. I legitimately would not be surprised if that happens.
Yep. Well, and that's when all the teams are going to flock to the Big Two.
Well, and what we're probably going to see is some kind of FCS type of playoff system for everybody else. And I don't know if this is the worst thing in the world. I know people act like it'll be the end of college football forever. I don't know if it's the worst thing in the world to have a playoff system for the G5, ACC, and Big 12. Because, like, legitimately think about it. Like, would you rather have a playoff system that is, quote unquote, lesser, but still, like, you have your own playoff system that you can actually win, and you don't have to worry about, like, oh my gosh, we didn't get a top 20 recruiting class, but, like, you can actually win. Like,
yeah,
because right now I don't see any ACC teams other than Florida State, who is gone here soon, and Clemson, if they find their way again, winning a national championship. And I don't see any Big 12 teams winning it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real big thing that we have to talk about at some point too, is how does that relate to the rest of college athletics? Because my guess is there's a sense to, like, college basketball is certainly the second biggest revenue sport for sure.
Right.
But it's not anywhere near on the scale, I don't think. And I think you would have to maintain the current structure for that. But again, who rules that? The NCAA. But the NCAA can't figure out college football. So,
you know what? Get rid of the NCAA. They want to expand the college basketball tournament. Can't stand that. I don't want 100 some teams. Keep it at, what is it now? 72. Keep it at 72.
Listen, we're going to say it and maybe this is me pushing this narrative, but I'm going to say it again, and I think we should need to make t-shirts, Big Ten Huddle t-shirts that say this. The NCAA is stupid.
Brought to you by the Big Ten Huddle. We'll self-report themselves.
Yeah.
We are self-reporting that we made t-shirts calling the NCAA stupid. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.